Jesus met me right where I was. And it was that sense, joy is that sense that, wow, someone's here with me, but someone's glad to be with me. And especially for fathers with your children, I like to put it this way: let's let Jesus borrow our face for a little while. Like, how would I look at my sons if Jesus lives in my face today when I get home from work?
I don't think it's ever happened before where I've met somebody and then less than a week later, so we're talking 5 days since we met, here we are hopping into a podcast conversation, because usually it's just there's a time process, but you're about to take some time away from work and ministry.
I am.
So I was like, is there any chance? So thank you for saying yes.
Oh, I'm glad it worked, brother. I'm really excited to be here with you.
Well, I have like 100 questions, so we're going to get to just, I'm truly, in my research in just the last 5 days, I took a deep dive after walking by, because I read the titles of all your books. I just kind of quickly got an idea for your heart and your area of work and expertise. And so because I have so many questions, sometimes it's fun to let's go story first, and then we'll see where we rock and roll. But the story is, we play tag with my daughters. We play monster tag at the playground.
Oh, wow.
And now monster tag is delightful tag. It's not scary fun. Monster. It's delightful monster. But I have long arms, and I can reach up and I can catch them and try not to trip them. But it's monster tag at the playground is one of our favorites. But
sweet.
You know this, Chris, that monster, and that just like analogy of dads being the monster. We're loud, we're fast, we have long reach, which is all fun. It can be delight, but it can also bring destruction with being a monster. And I'd love to just hear, where does that take your heart when you think about DadAwesome and monster tag?
Oh, I love that picture. And part of what we do is we train relational skills that help us to be gentle protectors. And so our brain is wired to be a predator when we're first born, because we want to put everything in our mouth. We want to consume. And so we learn how to be gentle protectors who have fun and who smile and laugh, but also who know when to stop, right? Like if you think of tickling, my sons would love when I would tickle them. But there's a moment where they were like, okay, you could tell they reached their limit. Let me have a breather. So that's a relational skill, right? Where I'm able to say, hey, you know what? Let's take a breather right now. So learning to use the brakes is part of how we build trust and safety in our families. And so just keeping that in mind, joy grows when we're glad to be together. And I love that game that you play with your kids. It's fun. I bet there's smiles on everybody's face, lots of laughter, right? Joy is a high energy response. And so whenever we feel this glad to be togetherness, we kind of get energized. And joy always leads to rest. So Jeff, it's just when I build joy with my sons, or we play or we wrestle, they love to wrestle, we rest and we take a breather at the right times. And so just thinking about, fun and good things grow. But we want to know when the light turns yellow and it's getting ready to turn red, we just tap the brakes, we pause, let our kiddos have a moment to rest, and then we pick up with some more fun, some more joy. So that's a unique perspective, as we think about that.
Now, your chapter of dad life is your sons. Are they both teenagers, or is one 12?
They are. They're both teenagers now. Yep, it's gotten real.
Oh, man. How would your wife describe, if you subtract 10 years in your dad presence, your fatherhood journey, subtract 10 years, how would she have described you as a dad?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I think, she would describe me as someone that loves connection. I love connection with my sons. And, any chance, any excuse to spend time connecting with them. My sons love to be outside. So, we'd be outside every moment we could, playing, running around, having fun. And so I just, I love being a dad. And having just those sweet moments of connection with them, man, I'll always cherish these times.
So you said, just that love that you get to be their dad. And I've been using the word delight, like delightful dad,
word.
of just like, God said, you're my loved son, in whom I am well pleased, right? That we can bring some of that. But delightful dads it's not like we accidentally become delightful dads.
Right. That's right.
In fact, the pressures of life probably move us in the other direction of being a little bit sharp and edgy. And several of my friends, because of DadAwesome and because of some of the coaching I've done, they actually can't even imagine me not loving being a dad or being sharp with my girls or abrasive or defensive with my wife. But I told them, I was just being real. I was like, guys, I need some prayer. Like and they I can't even imagine you like that. I'm like, well, it's real. I don't stay in that land.
Yes, that's right.
What moves you away from delighting as a dad, and what are some things you've learned to get you back in that direction?
Yeah, that's a great question. I grew up, loved my dad, such an amazing guy. But when I was younger, he had a lot of anger, right? He just had a lot of anger. So I learned this example of anger gets things done. And so when my sons were born, I said, Lord, I want to be different, I want to be able to have that delight, right? I love that word that you use, delight, because in the brain, delight means when someone delights in us, that's joy. That's how our brain responds to delight. It's like, wow, someone's really glad to be with me. So I think, part of my prayer going into fatherhood was just, I want to give my son something a little different than what I had. And you know what? I still mess up. I still drop the ball with my sons. But what I've given them something that I didn't really get growing up, which was repair. Right? So in those moments where I've lost my joy and I lost my peace and I feel that disconnect, I want to get really good at repairing with my sons and saying, guys, I'm sorry. Dad was too loud there or dad was too intense. I want them to be able to have that freedom to be able to get back to joy when we've lost our joy. And honestly, when I look back on this time in my life, more than anything, I want my sons to feel loved. I want them to feel valued. I want them to feel seen, and I try to make it a point every night when I say goodnight to them. Dad loves you guys. I love you guys. And give them that big hug. Now they're teenagers, they're not real big always on the dad hug, but just to really affirm and validate, I love you guys. And I want them to always feel that love, right?
Yeah.
Just to have that father's love. There's something about that that's so healing. And so just for me, I've had to be very purposeful. Some of this has come natural to me when I first became a dad. Like I have to really, it's like working out. I've got to grow some muscles here that I really haven't used very much in being able to connect with them or reconnect and just to really try to be present in their lives. Like I want their mind to always feel like dad loves me.
Yes.
In the good and the bad, in the hard times and the fun times. I want them to just feel like dad loves me. That's my prayer. That's my prayer.
And I want to move into that idea of skills and training and actually go beyond. In fact, this is a quote that I think it's from The Joy Switch. It might be from a different one of your books, but you said, our good intentions and willpower take a back seat to emotional capacity. That is our ability to manage what we feel and regulate our emotions. So the dads listening, we all have good intentions. We wouldn't be listening to DadAwesome without having good intentions and willpower. But it doesn't matter, those good intentions and willpower, if we don't have the skill of managing, and regulating our emotions. So this is kind of the deep dive question that's going to take us deep into brain science and all you're learning about. Man, I would love to hear, Chris, just some coaching to help us be ready to put action and to actually follow through to those intentions.
Oh, I love that. So what I found really interesting as I started going into brain science is that God gave our brain what we call a relational circuit. And it's kind of like a dimmer light switch. When it's on, I'm relational, right? I want to engage with you. I feel curious what's happening in your mind. I want to be kind. Really, I express the best of myself when this relational circuit, or what I call the joy switch, is on. But that dimmer switch can go off, right? Where I get strong emotions. Maybe I didn't sleep last night, or there's a conflict that I'm navigating. When things get hard to manage, then this relational circuit goes off, what we call enemy mode.
Right.
And in enemy mode, right, my children or my friends or my coworkers, they feel like enemies, even other drivers, they feel like enemies in that moment. And now the good news is that while the switch can go on or off, the good news is we can get the switch back on anytime it starts to fade. And I encourage men, when you notice you're starting to lose your joy or your peace, right, that's probably where enemy mode's creeping in. That's where, like, what helps you get your joy and peace back. Some guys just need to go outside and take a couple deep breaths, right? Or they need to go do something, go in the garage and do something. But just learning what helps you when you start to slip into enemy mode and you feel that we feel rigid and tense and angry. Right. We're not our best selves, right, in enemy mode. And just thinking through what helps you stay and return to relational mode anytime you kind of fall out and you slip. And we're all going to do that, Jeff. We're all going to have those times, right, where we've lost our joy and our peace. We slip into enemy mode. I'd rather be on my phone. I'm not getting along with my wife, or I'm upset with my kids over something. The good news is we don't have to stay there, right? I also spend a lot of time talking to Jesus about what's going on when I'm feeling like I'm slipping into enemy mode here, and I don't want to visit this for too long. And so even connecting with another guy or connecting with someone, whatever it is that helps you stay in what I call your relational sweet spot, where you're curious, you're kind, and you really want to be present with your kids and your family. That a little bit goes a long way when we use that lens, because we all lose access to the relational parts of our brain at times, but we don't have to stay there, Jeff. And that's a really hopeful message. We don't have to stay stuck in enemy mode.
Yes, and I sometimes will realize I'm going in that direction of I'm amplifying complaints or amplifying frustrations, or I'm rehearsing over and over what someone didn't do or did, and I'll go do 10 burpees,
I love that.
And sometimes that'll work physical, go do something physical. Sometimes I'll still be in the same place after that physical. It's I try something else, and then there's declaration prayers, scripture, and I'm declaring, I'm using my voice, and usually that one does help. But what are some other examples of, man, I'm the person I love most, I am vilifying in my head, I'm enemy mode, what do I think, why? It's so crazy, and it's usually tiredness, end of a day,
for me.
Bedtime didn't go great with my 4 daughters, and now I'm I just want to wash dishes by myself. I don't even want to be near I'm referring to my wife, Michelle, right? Okay. And she knows, I can swing and then swing back. What are some other examples on how to name it, but then to take positive action?
Yeah, so there's 2 responses that we usually have in enemy mode. Some of us get amped up. I love your example of doing the burpees. You're moving, right? Some of us, when we start to slip in enemy mode, we have energy and we need to burn it off, right? We need to burn it off. Some of us are more low energy people. And so when we're slipping into enemy mode, we need a little space, right? We just need to go cool down. I often tell people the thing that they'll tell you if you ever happen to be in an ambulance, take some deep breaths, right? They're always going to tell you the first thing to go when we slip into enemy mode is our breathing. We get really shallow. We kind of just, for me, I practically hold my breath. I can tell when I'm in enemy mode where I'm holding my breath. I'm hardly breathing. So just simply taking some deep breaths, you get more oxygen into your bloodstream, more oxygen to your brain. It calms down. But if people are low energy, they probably need some space, right? They need a little distance to cool down, right, when the jets are too hot. But some of us, we need movement. And so I love the burpees example. Some of us, we just need to move and burn off some steam. One of the go-to responses to help me get out of enemy mode is remembering joy. And so when you pause and just remember some of the good things, what are some of God's gifts, right? I look at pictures on my phone when I'm really I'm slipping into enemy mode or I'm stuck in enemy mode. I found that remembering those special moments, those fun days when I took my sons to the beach and we got to play Frisbee or throw the football, even looking at pictures on our phone reminds us of joy. And honestly, that is one of the best ways to help us get unstuck and stay out of enemy mode, is you're activating what I call these joy files in your brain. And anytime we remember joy from the past, your brain responds as though it's reliving the moment all over again, which is amazing, right? We're fearfully and wonderfully made. God made us amazing, amazing creatures. Here we are, amazing people. But remembering joy. And some people, I know some guys, they'll have a little list in their phone and the Notes app, and they will write down special memories that will be their go-to spot to really recharge and refresh. So that I encourage everybody to try, Jeff. Remember the good stuff.
Yes, I'm thinking of the visual of the movie Inside Out. Of like, I'm grabbing these glowing orbs of memories, and I'm putting them back on the screen. And
that's right.
So good. Okay, so there's using photos, there's using lists of joyful memories, treasured moments, gratitude lists.
Right.
I mentioned declaration prayers, scripture breathing.
I love that.
I'm thinking about like the Wim Hof 10-minute method, or the John Eldridge pause app, like he's breathing.
So good.
I'd love for you to add even a couple others. Any other ones you didn't mention that you'd say would help?
Yeah, some of us need to voice what we're feeling. And so if you're really having a hard time, is there someone that you could talk to for a couple minutes? Someone that can pray for you? Do you have a brother who can pray for you? Being able to just, anytime your brain feels seen, heard, and understood, that's going to help you get out of enemy mode. So that's where talking to Jesus. I love your examples with the prayers. The box breathing is another good thing people can do. One of the best ways to quiet is actually deep inhale, and when you exhale, you sigh. And so you fill your lungs with air, but when you exhale, you sigh. And that, lots of fun science around it, but what that does is that really helps get our nervous system back to a trainable state. Some of us, you know what? Maybe you need a little project. Like, I like you're doing dishes. I'm the same way. When I notice, wow, I'm really getting offline here and I'm not helping the bedtime right now because I'm offline. Doing dishes, right? Do something simple. And your brain gets a lot of dopamine. If you do something for a few minutes and you bring it to like a stopping point, a lot of us just it's a short little finish this task. So I've got a few things in the garage. I want to go move around. I don't want to do my 3-hour cleaning. I'll save that for another day. But what can I do in 5, 6, 7 minutes that's going to help me feel good because I did something? But I also have a few friends in my phone that if I'm not, I'm having a hard time getting out of enemy mode, I could call or I could text and say, hey, I'm not doing well. Would you mind praying with me? And as well, remembering times where you felt God's closeness. So have you ever had a time in your life where you just felt like God was there, God was with you, Jesus was right there by your side? Those are other things that when you can remember God's gifts and God's closeness, then we can say, well, Jesus, where are you right now? What are you doing right now? And just the other day, I was flying home, Jeff, from the event we were both at. And I noticed when they were calling the groups, all the people from different groups all got in line, and the boarding became a bit of chaos. And I was standing there, and I noticed I started to feel tense. I started almost like anxious. Like I felt like I have a carry-on bag. I'm not going to be able to have a spot to put my bag by the time I get on this thing. So I was slipping into enemy mode. I started worrying. And the moment I caught that, Jeff, I was like, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath. And I said, Lord Jesus, what are you doing right now? What do you want me to know about where you're at in this? And I just had this few seconds of a thought. Just had a sense of Jesus seeing me. He was there. He was like, Chris, take a breather. You're going to get on the plane. You're going to make it home. Take a breather. And so I was able to stay curious, like, wow, why am I feeling this way? So, I mean, we're talking a 30-second little interaction, Jeff, that just helped me. Okay, my feet were slipping into enemy mode. Taking that little bit of time to remember God's closeness and then interact with Jesus in that moment. Man, I stayed relational the rest of that time. It was so simple, but yet it really impacted me.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said with joy and how you actually see people's response when you bring joy. You can see them light up a little bit. And my extreme example was the year after the COVID shutdown. When Disney World opened back up, we happened to be in Florida, and I didn't get to see anyone's smiles the whole day long because we all we were covered. Our smiles were covered.
That's hard.
It was a hard day, totally.
Yeah,
'Cause I'm
that is
usually
hard.
you can get like you can steal joy, not steal. It's the wrong
Yeah,
expression.
yeah, but
you
you
can
get it.
borrow joy from other
That's
people's
right.
delight at a playground
Yeah.
or
Oh.
at an ice cream store. You're like you're seeing
Yeah.
everybody light up, and
Yeah.
it was none of that. But
Oh, that's hard.
what I'm thinking about is it's almost imaginative prayer. What you just mentioned
Yeah.
of you ask Jesus, "What do you want me to know?" 30-second prayer.
Yeah.
I compare that with your other advice of go back to times you felt close to God. So imagining prayer of a dock that I was on, or there's a stone wall in Arizona that I laid on and looked at the stars after a night of ministry.
Wow.
And like there's things that actually, it's amazing. My physical body just responded
that.
to me mentioning a memory in Arizona
Wow.
when I was 20 years old.
I love that.
So what would you add into God being our source of joy
Yes.
to what you've already shared?
Yeah, one of the things that really honestly shocked me about God, and I grew up in the church, but I drifted once teenage years arrived. I ran the other way full speed. And in college, I had a chance to do an internship with a ministry. And during that time, I started to really take seriously interacting with God. And at first, I didn't think God would talk to me. I thought he was mad at me all the time. So I was a little nervous. But I started talking to him, and I was like, Lord, I want your closeness in my life. Like more than anything, Lord, I just want your closeness. And I would start having these thoughts of Jesus actually smiling when he looked at me. Because I thought I'd see I thought I would have an angry reaction from Jesus. But over time, as I just started these talks with the Lord, like, Lord, I want your closeness. Like, how do you see me, Lord? Because I feel like you see me as a failure. I'm a bad boy. I'm, not worthy of love. And I started to have these thoughts and images in my mind for the first time that Jesus was actually glad to be with me.
Yes.
And it shocked me, Jeff. I was shocked. And it took a little while for me to really let that sink in. So I encourage men, take the time as you remember God's gifts and you remember God's closeness. Start asking Jesus, how does he see you? What look is on his face when he looks at you? And how does he see you? And honestly, that changed my life. It's so simple, but yet it was so profound. God likes being with me, and he likes being with all of us, and he's glad to see us. And that, Jeff, that just changed everything, honestly.
Wow. When we are hovering around this topic of joy, some dads are just like, well, I'm an introvert, or I'm quiet, or my gravitational pull to who I am in my 35 years of life is just, that's not who I am. That's some other people, not me.
Right. Yep.
How would you encourage those dads to stay engaged?
Yeah, I relate to that. I really do relate to that. I really spent a lot of time feeling dismissive or even just disconnected more than I wanted. And the nice thing about joy is it's not happiness. Happiness is circumstantial. Like, I'm happy that my kitchen is currently almost finished with the construction project. That makes me very happy. But joy is through the shared experience. And so we feel joy, if you think about it, if I, when I went to the hospital because I hurt my back and they kept me overnight, when my wife and kids showed up, I felt joy. Like they were with me in that place. So joy doesn't have to be over the top and exuberant, but joy is also that sense of someone's there with us, and this someone is glad that we're here. And the nice thing that I've learned about God is he will meet us right where we're at. I wasn't an outgoing, exuberant type of person. I kind of held my cards close. But Jesus met me right where I was. And it was that sense, joy is that sense that, wow, someone's here with me, but someone's glad to be with me. And especially for fathers with your children, I like to put it this way: let's let Jesus borrow our face for a little while. Like, how would I look at my sons if Jesus lives in my face today when I get home from work? So that's the one way to look at it, Jeff. Like, what would it look like if Jesus borrows your face when you get home tonight and you interact with your kids?
Wow. The tonight when I get home, there's that framework, but then there's also the awareness that what's coming after our joy might span back through decades earlier, something that happened. And,
that's right.
And things, or it could just be the phone call on the way home. It could be that too. But you kind of surface these triggers, these common triggers that shut down our circuits. The big six negative emotions. I'll just hit them fast. But shame, anger, disgust, sadness, fear, hopeless, despair. You know, you don't have to break them all down, but just could you talk a little bit about how there's things coming after this circuit that want to move us away from that switch being turned on?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about those emotions is emotions are signals that something needs our attention, right? So anger, for example, anger is your brain's way of trying to make something stop. Now, God gave us these emotions. They're not bad, but when they feel bad is when I don't know how to return to joy, or I don't know how to calm myself. And so the good news is our brain's wired for emotions. I was just reading about Elijah recently and how he was threatened by Jezebel, and man, he took off. But yet God showed up, and God fed him. And God, gave him rest. And then eventually he gets to interact with God, very, very intimately, very closely. So our brain is going to have emotions. And it is going to have emotions. But the $1 million question we want to think about is, what do I need when I feel this emotion, right? When I'm mad, what do I need? Or when I'm feeling some shame, right? I don't like feeling shame. But what helps me be able to sense God's closeness and still be my relational self? But I want to encourage the guys, our brain's wired for emotions. Emotions are going to happen. We probably all have opinions about whether emotions are good or not. But just think about it this way. What helps you return to your relational, peaceful self when you're in big feelings and big reactions? Whether it's the connecting with someone, interacting with Jesus, taking that walk, like whatever it is that just helps you be able to no longer be the Incredible Hulk, right? We want to stay David Banner here. We want to be able to stay our relational self. But we are going to have those moments, right, where I get mad, right? Or I get disgusted, or I get worried. It's not the end of the world, right? We can learn to feel those feelings, share them, and then calm them, whether it's with Jesus, whether it's with someone we trust. But don't beat yourself up because emotions come up. They are going to come up, right? But we can learn to calm those emotions and stay our relational selves.
Yeah, and then there's kind of two sides of this conversation. There's the who am I becoming? How am I managing? How am I moving towards connection, relational connection versus all the other negative ways? But then there's the raising kids that understand and feel connection with God, experience joy, raising kids who are resilient, which I know there's a direct connection. I'd love to hear you expound on that connection between joy and resilience. Could you take us a little bit into the other side of coaching, helping our kids grow in these areas?
That's a great question. And every human brain, when emotions arise in our kids, every human brain wants to feel seen, heard, and understood, right? So when my son's really mad because his brother's being mean, what they need from me in that moment is to feel seen, heard, and understood, right? I might still have to do some correcting. I might still have to do some discipline. But that comes after I validate and comfort. So the brain can be validated and comforted. So when my son's really mad, I say, wow, buddy, I can see you're really mad right now. Like your face is red. You're upset, aren't you? So validation just says what we see, right? I don't have to fix it in that moment. But once I validate, that helps him feel, okay, Dad sees me here. Okay, somebody sees me here. And then we follow validation with comfort that just says, what do you need right now when you're this mad? Right? What do you need? Do you need some deep breaths, right? Do you want to go sit outside and talk? Like, what helps you calm down? And most of us have no clue what we need, right? When people would ask me that question, Jeff, I was like, I don't even know what I need. I just need this anger to go away. But when our kids are upset, when we validate and comfort them, that sets the stage for everything else we want to accomplish. So if I do need to discipline or correct, that comes after validation and comforting, because what that does is that's going to help him calm down so that then he's in a teachable state. But if he's in enemy mode because he's so angry, he's not in a teachable state, right? And so I might try to use it as a learning opportunity, but if he's in enemy mode, the brain is not open to new information in enemy mode. So validation and comfort. And Jeff, that was not natural for me growing up. Like none of this was natural for me at all. I had none of these skills and practices. But the good news is we can practice. We can get better at practicing, right? Hey, validation, you're really upset. What do you see and hear in your child, right? Just put words to that right? And comfort is, hey, is there anything good that we can hold on to while you navigate this? Is there anything good from your day? Or what would be helpful right now? And what that does is that helps get them back into their relational best self. And then we can have the discussions. Then we can talk about what needs to happen now as consequences or correction. But the main thing is we help them to get their joy and their peace back so that they're calmer than they would be before. So that's just, that's one tool that you'll get a lot of mileage out of, validation and comfort. They just need to feel like somebody gets me. Somebody's with me, and now they're in a much better state to have that discussion that we might want to have with them.
And they might even have the solutions themselves. They might not need.
Right, that's right. And a lot of times they will. Yeah, you're exactly right. I love that. A lot of the times they will, because now they have access to the creative parts of their brain, which is in relational mode. So I love that. And that does... You'll be surprised how often that can happen when we're just curious, because I'm staying relational. I'm trying to stay relational with my children. That's where curiosity is present. Hey, buddy, what's going on here? I can see you're really having a bad day, right? What would be helpful? What do you need right now? Let's figure this out together. Things get a lot easier after that.
Does that springboard into emotional resilience, or is that another
it does.
Another area?
Yeah, it does. So here's the good news about relational glad to be together joy, right? We're genuinely just glad to be together, and we value the process of getting back to joy anytime we lose our joy, right? Which with kids, this can happen a lot, especially I have teenagers, so we get a lot of practice on this. So building joy strengthens our ability to suffer well. And that's where you get a lot of emotional resilience come in. People who have, they feel loved, but they have people who are just genuinely glad to see them, and they make the effort to connect with them. Joy increases our ability to have emotional resilience. So we're hard branches to break on a tree when there's joy that's present in our family, in our interactions. So the more joy, our children have, the better they're going to be able to do to roll with the hard stuff and to recover when things go wrong. It pays off over time, Jeff, and it's just a little bit goes a long way when it comes to joy. That really will go a long way with our kids.
Is that what you mean by when I read about joy bonds versus fear bonds? Is that the same concept?
Yeah, so joy bonds and fear bonds is your brain has there's two motivations for the brain. It's either going to be this glad to be together joy. So when there's glad to be together joy, my brain looks for and scans the environment for opportunities to grow some joy. And Jeff, I've learned this about you, just getting to interact with you since the weekend. You're someone that has a lot of joy, and people who interact with you, they feel like, wow, this guy's really glad that I'm here. It's very genuine. And so what that would be is, wow, anytime I'm around Jeff, I just really feel valued. Like, this guy is glad that I'm here. So if I don't, when I don't have a lot of joy, or seasons where I just feel like someone's poked a hole in my joy balloon, then your brain's going to run on the fuel of fear. So instead of scanning for opportunities for joy, now my brain's going to scan for threats. So that's where you'll start getting, and we'll bond out of joy, or we'll bond out of fear, right? Are we building glad to be togetherness, or are you dreading having to interact with me because you don't know what's going to happen, right? And so that's where people, especially our children, like, what are they going to get out of Dad when I come home? Are they going to get a genuine glad to be with you response? I think it's not like super over the top, and it's not faking it, till we make it. It's just genuinely, what do I enjoy in my kids, right? And Lord, what do you see when you look at my sons, right? And how can I reflect that this evening when I interact with them? And that feels a lot different than, oh no, Dad's home. Now I have to I have to hide or I have to avoid him. Then they're stepping on eggshells. So joy bonds, are we glad to be together?
Yep.
Can we expect and anticipate more joy? Or it's like, I really don't want to be around this person, right? I've got to avoid them. And that's where the fear kind of starts to become our motivation instead of joy.
Earlier you mentioned, as dad, sometimes I don't know what I'm feeling. Like, what am I feeling right now?
Yeah. Yep.
What would be either a recommended resource, could be one of your books, or, emotion chart, name your emotion. Like, what would be an encouragement for me to grow in being able to name what I'm currently experiencing and feeling?
Well, that's a great question. Is our ministry, the team, we just created an emotions chart that gives different words for those 6 emotions that you mentioned earlier. Those are like what we call the big 6 emotions our brain is wired for. We have a lot of different words to try to capture different shades of that emotion. We even have body words, because emotions will always show up in our body. So if I'm mad, you're going to see it when I'm mad. So that's a free resource. Anybody could quickly download. That's really why we created this. We just want to help guys be able to, hey, I don't even know what I'm feeling here. Let me look at some of these options. And so with a little bit of curiosity, it's like, okay, I thought I was just mad, but I think I'm feeling some disgust. I'm really disgusted in how my son treated his friend at school today. And there's just a lot of, different words that try to really help capture the word that most resonates. And it's helpful to have that piece, right? Like, I didn't know what I was feeling earlier. Now I have a sense, okay, now I'm going to take some time to quiet myself or to repair with my son or whatever it might be. So that resource it would be a great tool.
That'll be linked in all of our show notes. Now, I'm looking at 3 of your books. I know there's a lot of other resources as well, with the 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Marriages, the 4 Habits of Raising Joy-Filled Kids, and then the Joy Switch. And then there's the children's book, which I was pumped about, Switched On for Joy. So that's, I guess, there's 4 books. Where would you, those will all be linked, but where would you suggest, if there's something stirred up in today's conversation, a dad, is there one that you're like, this is the starting point, or how would you guide us?
Yeah, I have 2 thoughts. One is the book, The Joy Switch, which really is about what we're talking about. How do I get out of enemy mode? How do I stay my relational self? And how do I build more joy with my kids? Right. And that 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Parenting book, that gives a lot of exercises that dads can do. Ultimately, it's good information, but it's the exercises that really help us to instill these habits. So I'd say that 4 Habits book or the Joy Switch would lots of good exercises in both of them.
Thank you. And as we kind of come in for landing, any just 2-3 minutes, anything that you're like, man, we didn't cover this, I'd love to encourage or challenge the DadAwesome community. Any just last things you'd want to share?
Yeah, I would say just, some encouragement for dads. One of the challenges of being a dad is sometimes we didn't get some of the things that we want to pass on to our kids. And you know what? The good news here, God is a God of redemption and resurrection. So anytime life comes or death comes our way, we find life in Christ. And so I would say parenting can be hard, especially when our kids reach ages where kind of our maturity got stuck. So I did really well with my kids. When they became teenagers, my brain is like, I don't know what to do with this. You know what? This is where it just helps. Getting our peace with Jesus, talking to him about the things that we're noticing, finding other dads. That's why I love what you're doing, Jeff. Because you know what? Finding other dads is one of the best ways we get that support so that we can become that father and reflect what our heart is for our kids. Yeah. So I'd say it's hard work. You're climbing a mountain, but you know what? The views are spectacular, and you will never regret trying to be your best self so that you love your kids well. And above all, our kids know that they're loved. When they know that, they're going to hold on to that the rest of their lives. And you're not going to do it perfectly, but we can get really good at repairing when we've messed up. I do a lot of repairing with my kids, and you know what? That builds joy. And so just having grace, but yet finding some encouragement with other dads, that can go a long way.
Yeah. Chris, thank you. Thanks for your encouragement. Thanks for the resources you've created. Would you say a short prayer over all of us dads before we say goodbye?
Thank you, man. Yeah. Well, Lord God, I just thank you for all the dads who's listening to this time, Lord. And I do pray that you just bring them the wind for their sails, Lord, that they would see themselves through your eyes, Father, that they would see your perspective when you look at them. And Lord, that your face truly shines over us. And I just pray, Father, that they would, all the dads would be able to also reflect your love to their kiddos, Lord. And that, Jesus, you would borrow their faces in a sense, like their faces would be billboards that reflect your joy and delight. And Father, that anytime we lose our joy and our peace, I just pray all the dads would more and more find you faster in those moments when our joy is gone. And I thank you, Jesus, that you never leave us nor forsake us. And I just thank you that your face truly shines over your children and your people. And so thank you for these dads, Lord. I just pray your blessing over them, that they would have a sense of your peace and your delight today. In Jesus' name, amen.